the pandemic has taught us anything is that we truly are in a globalized network world. We aren't just competing with our comp set. We are all competing for attention at the world stage. And the one currency that people need to sort of understand and recognize that is most valuable to our destination, it is the currency of new talent.
Okay, everybody, we've been talking about recovery for a while now, and my team at Relic has been working on recovery campaigns for several destinations over the last couple of months. They've actually developed a pretty amazing, we'll call it an algorithm, to know when it's safe to do acquisition marketing in a market. And so what I mean by that is you've got government regulations, you've got, how is the virus affecting that market, whether there's been a decrease in cases or a decrease in deaths in that market. When is it safe to advertise, hey, come to our destination? Like I said, our team has come up with this algorithm to provide that information for you, and we're offering a free market report. We're calling it Recovery Triggers. And if you'd like a free Recovery Trigger report for your target market where you want to draw visitors from, please email me directly at adam@relicagency.com. Or you can go to recoverytriggers.relicagency.com and we'll get you set up with a free report, and we even have the ability to send you a weekly recurring report so you can see what's happening in that market on a weekly basis and make sure you're launching your acquisition campaign at the perfect time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. I'm excited to be with you today. We're doing some fun stuff right now with taking the Destination Marketing Podcast on the road, and we've had a lot of fun in Tennessee, and we have a lot more states on the docket. If you want your state or your destination to be included in our on-the-road, in-person show, we would love to chat with you. What we usually do is kind of get that first destination locked down, and then we'll find other partners while we're in the area. And we would love to come to your destination. So if you're interested, let us know. But we've got a great show for you today. We have Andreas Weissenborn from Destinations International. And Andreas, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
Absolutely. I've been wanting to have someone from your organization on for a long time. Your organization has such an important role in the industry, and I'm sure we'll get into that today. But before we dive in, and you're a listener of the show, so you knew this was coming, but a couple of icebreaker questions that we like to ask. First of all, if you could go anywhere in the world, Andreas, where would it be?
That answer is pretty easy for me, and that is usually Vermont. I have sort of fallen in love with that state in the past decade of my life. Something of the cross mixture of the people and the values there. Myself and family seem to come back to that twice a couple years, and I wouldn't hesitate a chance to go there at any moment I could in a post-COVID world, that is.
Great. Okay, tell me a little bit about the activities that you're doing when you're in Vermont.
Certainly. I mean, I think one of the things you can't escape when you go up there, and there's certainly other places, the parts of the world that have this, but just the sheer beauty you see of the natural landscape, especially if you're very privileged to see it during the autumn landscape. I have described to people many times that it's like going from a black and white TV to a color TV when you see foliage up there. So all the great things, hiking, exploring back roads, great, road trip driving, all that kind of stuff. That state is just really beautifully meant for it. Incredible sunsets, sunrises, all that kind of great stuff that comes with sort of a great outdoor culture place.
Awesome. How many times have you been?
Ooh, more than both my hands and my feet, I believe. So yeah, somewhere I was lucky enough, fortunately, to, once you find a place you sort of like and love, it's one of those things you try to always go when you can. I was fortunate enough to get married up there. So I want to say I have been probably somewhere upwards of, 20 times in the last probably 6 years.
I love that because there's a couple of different types of travel, right? Like you've got the once in a lifetime type trips where, and we've had people come on the show and talk about Iceland and they've gone to New Zealand and Australia and some amazing places. But what you don't get with some of those once in a lifetime trips is the traditions that come along with a recurring trip, like what you've done in Vermont. Are there any traditions that you guys have created on those trips to Vermont that you kind of keep going back to?
Yeah, 100%. A lot of it comes down to, the road trip experience. So I love, probably in a different lifetime, I could have been a cartographer. So I love looking at the maps and the routes, different points of interest along the way to say, we should stop there. So even fun stuff, just, with my wife picking the playlist, the podcast list to listen to, okay, we know we have 400 some miles across. Okay, we can get this amount of podcasts or audiobooks or albums and songs in and things like that to explore. And then, just sort of making ear notes of stuff I see and just, across social media, LinkedIn, Pinterest of like, oh, that maker looks awesome up there, that bakery, that dinery, whatnot, and sort of keeping a running list in between those gaps of when you go. And then when it's time we're going to make that trip, we say, okay, let's look at our sort of back catalog of things we've sort of earmarked, and make a point to try to see them if we can.
Great, great. Sounds like an amazing time. We've kind of gone in reverse order here because it sounds like Vermont is definitely your favorite trip you've ever been on. Let's talk a little bit about somewhere you haven't been that maybe is on your bucket list that you'd like to go. What's that destination for you?
Probably somewhere. Japan has been one that's long been on that list. I just think everything about it, the culture, the landscape, the government structure, it's just so radically different than here in the United States that it's just one of those things that I hopefully get opportunity somewhere in my lifetime to go and explore. Obviously, it's we're all going to be taking a back seat before getting on a plane during this current timing, but I hope it's something I definitely get a chance to explore coming up. That is absolutely on the bucket list. Hopefully, sometime in my near future.
I'm hearing some interesting things from you. Your favorite trip you've ever been on is Vermont, and you continue to go back to Vermont. But then I also hear that the reason you want to go to Japan, it sounds like you don't mind getting out of your comfort zone, and you didn't say like a specific activity you want to do, but you said you want to feel the differences between that culture and structure and country than you have here. I think that's fascinating because, in one sense, it sounds like with your traveling habits, you're a little bit of a creature of habit, but then you're not afraid to get out of your comfort zone. Sounds like there's a lot of destinations that would appeal to you, Andreas.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the wonderful aspects of my current job with This Internationals is obviously pre this pandemic was the ability to travel to so many parts of our members backyards. So you'd see those different flavors of life, and I think when I had the opportunity for my own personal travel, that's why I returned back to the routines, particularly with Vermont and things like that. But that doesn't mean I think all of us sometimes have to push ourselves, especially as you get older. It's okay to feel uncomfortable, and that's really what sort of chips away and breaks new character. That also I'm a fairly recent parent too, so I also hopefully.
Congrats.
Oh, thank you. I hope to
Boy
always
or girl?
boy. He's just about to turn 3, so I still consider that a new parent. I know people with much older kids will say otherwise, but but the point being is I try to challenge myself and hopefully set an example that it's okay to be placed in uncomfortable situations, and that's really what sort of makes you grow as an individual and hopefully a better person going forward.
Yeah, and to that point, we've all been in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation for most of this year now in
Yep.
the travel industry, and we'll dive into that. But before we do, I want to learn a little bit about your background and how you got into the tourism industry and in your current role.
Certainly. So I, did what a lot of sort of teenagers in my sort of generation growing up. I left high school, didn't quite know what I wanted to do. Took the onset to actually go to community college. I actually was a double minor in both art and music originally. I'm still a pretty avid guitar player, not so much artist anymore. Did one semester in it in college and hated it, and then switched over to information technology, IT. And that did that till I got my associates and then transferred to a 4 year. And I knew when I got out of college, I did not want to start at sort of the bottom of an organization. I wanted to come in with some level of experience. I just wasn't starting at the bottom. This was right around the 07, 08, of course, when that market crash was.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I remember in college, I had to, get your grades, your GPA high enough so that you can get part of the internship program. I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So I finally got that high GPA to get in the program, and it basically handed over like a physical tack board of just internships and say, here you go, apply at will, and then no help, no nothing. And so it's kind of like a shotgun effect. I just shot out my resume to 8 or so employers in the Baltimore region area. One of them being the Baltimore Area Convention and Visitors Association. That's now known as Visit Baltimore. No, I know nothing about CVBs, tourism entities, destination quality of place, none of that stuff. Marketing. I mean, I was there for the internships for basically for IT, and lo and behold, I got the job, the internship, the day after I turned 21, and just fell in love with it. Not just so much the fundamental work of what I was doing, but really the whole ethos behind what it meant to be a destination organization. I was blessed to start as an intern and left as a director for over a decade there. But one of the things I always told people is that I was in a very privileged position to say that I, worked for this city, by this city, and lived in this city. It's like a wheel, and every spoke represented one aspect of it. So it really gave me such a true appreciation of just not only the city that I lived and worked and loved, but the industry and the sector at large at whole. Through that time, most people who work at destination organizations, they know about, at the time it was early on, it was IACVB, then DMAI. And I was very blessed to have two incredible, really great mentors and supervisors during my time there, Jeff Hungate and Ron Melton, who kept pushing me and saying, Jeff originally saying, you need to get involved with DMAI. You need to just go to the events, meet your peers. And that was my first foray into seeing like, oh, I'm not alone here. There's these other people who are doing kind of what I'm doing in a different city or state or province. And we have sometimes similar problems and sometimes similar answers. And that was just intoxicating for me. I could not get enough of it. So I was doing whatever I could to serve on committees, be a part of it. And as my role sort of shifted, I kind of transitioned away from just traditional wires and pliers to more a data-focused position, and which led into research. I never saw a research type position at DI. And so a little bit after, I guess, 10 years of my career, when I was starting to sort of, okay, what's next for me? What I want to do? This position sort of opened up. I at the time lived in Baltimore. Destination National is headquartered in DC. And I thought, I'm getting this. This is my position to have. Like, I just one way or the other, I was going to get there. It just meant so much to me as not only a person who just really appreciated everything it meant to be as part of the sector, but also seeing it as that I wanted to be a good steward, that I could give back, that I was given such incredible opportunities for people like myself who knew nothing about the sector and the work we do, that I finally had the chance, the opportunity on the global stage to be a steward back, to hopefully inspire another generation or to help someone else next through that. And that's really sort of what has led me to some of the work and some of my proudest accomplishments has gotten me up to this point until now.
Well, Andreas, tell me what your specific role is now at Destinations International.
Certainly. My, I guess, formalized title is Senior Director of Research and Advocacy. I basically just kind of shortened to say research and advocacy. So our primary role, so I'll split them up here. So research, every trade association has sort of kind of tried and true research initiatives. So things being like, very quantitative research. So, what is compensation and benefits related for our members? What are organizational finance and spending habits? Things like that. So members can log in, kind of benchmark themselves, seeing, okay, here's how my comp set is spending for their advertising dollars or marketing budgets, and you kind of compare that stuff. So that's kind of one of the. And the other side is the more sort of qualitative side, where we do research relating to the travel boycotts and bans. If you kind of scour my LinkedIn, you can see work we're doing on the tourism lexicon, some of our fundamental ideologies, and basically research behind it. And that kind of leads into the advocacy work, which is really sort of trying to, change, defend, and articulate the narrative of what it means to be a destination organization. Now more than ever, it has really highlighted, obviously, sort of not only how important destination organizations are to the communities, but also how vulnerable we've been, through methods of, funding and other aspects, and just, community relevance and our messaging being heard. That's really the key advocacy component of it. We are not a lobbying organization, so you do not see myself or others on Capitol Hill, but we are doing every opportunity we can to educate our members to speak about themselves as a community shared value, to articulate what their worth is to the community. I try to always say that I'm trying to teach people to articulate what they do as a common good for the greater good.
Great. And that really gives us some insight into your role and the two components of your role. What about Destinations International as an organization? What's the mission of Destinations International?
I mean, basically is to fulfill for our memberships, basically to empower them to make sure that they do their jobs the best they can. We do that through sort of four core pillars: research, education, advocacy, and community. So research and advocacy, you get a 2-for-1 special with me at least. But then things like our education and community. This is things regarding our membership, our various summits that we have, our annual convention, our traditional educational offerings. So that's things like our accreditation programs, both on the individual level, being CDME and PDM, but then also our destination organization accreditation program, which is our DMAP. Those are sort of the four fundamental guiding principles for the trade association for our members. And so it's very neat because the members intersect on us on some of those various things. I have some members, who they're all about the summits and the events. That's where I see them. That's where I interact with them the most. That's where they sort of get their most fulfillment of being a member. But then there's this other, maybe sometimes newcomers to our sector who are coming into the CDME realm. They're trying to get their CDME, or they're going through the accreditation program on the DMAP side, and they're just trying to look for, okay, what are some either best practices or case studies or examples, or just peer-to-peer relations that I can help either better myself or better my relation with the organization. And it's very thrilling. It's extremely satisfying to see that, and also to end my day every day to thinking I can hopefully help someone along the ways with any one of those facets.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun and some great opportunities to, like you said, to give back to the industry. And, I wonder if you could give me an example. And remember, we've got destinations all over the world that listen to our show. And what I really try to do is every time I have a guest on, pull out like a usable takeaway, right? That can be implemented tomorrow, right? So tell me how you feel like one example of how Destinations International and the four kind of components of the organization have helped a destination navigate a difficult challenge.
Certainly. I'll kind of give a little more nuanced answer to that. One of the ones I always like to highlight in sort of our educations is myself and Jack Johnson, our chief advisor, we talk a lot about our tourism lexicon project. Basically, we are trying to teach destination organizations to speak about themselves as a common good. The same way we speak about clean water, education, safety. How we speak about that is how we should start speaking about our terminology. And when we put this out there, it literally was a set of 10 words. Two organizations sort of took that initiative and really did some interesting things with it that we didn't think about at first. And I'll kind of point that out. The first is actually Visit Champaign County. This is in a little small destination organization in Illinois, run by Jane Duluth. She always refers to herself as Jane from Champaign. And she is an actual incredible advocate for us, and someone I've really come to admire in my career here. But Jane saw the lexicon, the original 10 words, and said, this is great. I speak as a tourism professional, but I need my stakeholders to speak. I need my board. I need my county officials, those individuals to speak just like I do, to understand the importance of not only what tourism represents to my county, but what a destination organization brings to the table. And so what was interesting was Jane, and I recommend this to everyone, she has her own, nicely bi-weekly crafted newsletter, which she's putting out to the public. And I started noticing little, tweaks and revisions to her wording in her newsletter that she was using the lexicon. And that's because she was using it because her board and her county officials are using that newsletter as, sound bites and clips to talk about what they represent. And I thought that was such an amazing example that she took some of our work and found a way to project it outward. One of the other ones I always like to highlight is a reverse of that, of taking our work and then turning it inward. And that's actually Visit Phoenix. Visit Phoenix came to us with a sort of example, trying to figure out, we want to revisit our about us, our mission statement, so that staff internally feels pride in what they're doing. That they feel some sense of adoption of, that they're, like I mentioned earlier, they're working for the common good, for the greater good. And they basically took our lexicon and completely reworked their about us statement. I think originally it was just an about us, but they actually broke it down as an about us, a vision and a mission statement, as a way for the staff to feel pride in the work they do. And I have to knock on wood and hopefully check if their website still's got it up to date with it. But it's really great because if you could see the before and you could see the after, they really did an incredible pivot to sort of bringing in what they represent to the community and the resident at large as being a destination organization. I think a lot of sometimes what we've been trying to talk heavily about is that, part of your mission as a destination organization is bringing the community involvement with you, understanding that your resident really is your number one customer if you are a destination professional. So stuff like your publicly facing assets, website, materials should represent that. And I think it was great because Visit Phoenix took that approach and applied it internally, but then it's stamped right there on their website for the whole world to see.
Nice. Okay. Those are good examples. I appreciate you sharing those. We are going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more at the industry level, what you're seeing, because you at Destinations International get a very unique opportunity to understand what's happening kind of on the global level as opposed to just at the destination level like lots of us get insight into. So we're going to take a little break, and we'll get more into that in a moment. Okay, guys, since we started the Destination Marketing Podcast a little over a year ago, I've had several destinations reach out and say, hey, could you help me start a podcast? And at first we were like, well, no, that's not really what we do. But after enough requests, we said, you know what, let's explore this. And we've created a turnkey program for destinations where we will produce, we will host, we will edit, and we will publish your podcast for your destination on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. And all you have to do is show up and answer some questions. We're really excited about this program. We've got a few destinations that have been doing really, really well with their podcasts. And if you've ever thought about creating a podcast for your destination, but you don't have all the equipment, or you don't have the expertise or any of that type of stuff, let us take that off your hands. Let Relic handle your podcast creation and production, and all you have to do is show up and answer questions about all the amazing things there are to do within your destination. So let me know if you're interested. Email me at adam@relicagency.com, and we'll get you set up on this podcast program. Well, Andreas, let's talk a little bit about what you get to see at the holistic level for the industry. I mean, obviously, destinations are struggling right now across the industry, and I'd love to hear just kind of at the general level what you're seeing industry-wide.
Certainly. And so purpose of this industry, I'll kind of narrow the scope to just being destination organizations. Certainly there's the scope of, airlines, hoteliers and whatnot, but just for the purpose of this, I want to talk about destination organizations. Especially even before the pandemic, we were sort of trying to articulate and to people to understand that we were already sort of at risk. We were as a sector, we were the biggest we had ever been. We like to say that we were really honestly the new steel industry, but we were never more vulnerable. Situations we were seeing across, at least domestically, with we like to call it political dark matter influence, was happening in situations like Visit Florida. And others, we really started to see the fundamental political ground behind us start to shift. And so all those things that we saw weaknesses as being a destination in our sector. So, things like how we were funded, how did politicians see us, all this type of stuff, they just got, exacerbated even worse once the pandemic happened. And every sort of country around the world has handled the response differently, just like they have with the pandemic. And a lot of it is really a window into kind of our country's values of how they see us, some better, some worse. If we look up north as a starting point, I think it's interesting that Canada, unlike us here, has tourism ministry. So they have someone at the level of government who is there as the true liaison for tourism. So you saw things right away with funding efforts and their equivalents of PPP and other stuff come into play much more quickly and more readily than it's happening in the United States. So to either keep those people employed or to give dollars for programming for when they can market and continue up for that. You've certainly seen the meeting side of stuff change dramatically across the world. So, obviously right now in the United States, it's kind of interesting following what's happening with the NBA and the bubble situation. But to
Right.
see other parts of the world try to figure out a ways to do meetings and event in some capacity. So obviously, there are places that are open for business that are doing what they can, the best they can to house a traditional convention or meeting in a physically distant manner. And that's been pretty wild to see. That obviously the big limitation is though your participants are only those that you can attract locally, right? A lot of people have borders closed, and sometimes even political goodwill to make that happen aren't happening. And so I think what it's really sort of illustrated to us on our level is that I mean, you would never wish a pandemic on anyone, but at least it's provided the lens and the opportunity that all these countries around the world are finally starting to see, wow, tourism does a lot for us, and not just like as an economic engine, but just as a cultural engine. All these facets of things that we enjoy for quality of life and quality of place. Where I get to go eat out for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or where I take my family to attractions and that kind of stuff. Those aren't happening right now, and I really want countries are looking at, well, I want those to be there when this is over with. How do we support that? How do we? And so I think this is where desertizations, where it's been inspiring, is that they're given this opportunity to really present themselves in that new light. And various parts of the world have started to kind of realize that and started to help bolster that to do more with it. And that's kind of sort of been exciting. Now, certainly we have a hard road ahead of us. I don't think anyone is naive enough to think that it's going to be easy out of this, that we have a lot of work kind of in front of us. But it's been sort of exciting and fulfilling part of the work to see that, okay, there's a real opportunity here for us to really project what I preach every day in, day out, what we preach at Destination Nationals, that we feel that we are a community shared value. We are up there as a common good, and we should be seen as one. And when people value things, they fund things, and that's really what we're hoping. Once we can sort of recover and transcend through that we'll be in a much better place than where we were getting into the situation.
Got it. Okay. Well, one of your roles, or one of the components of your role, I should say, is research. And I know you guys have been doing a lot of research in the pandemic, and understanding traveler habits and also impact on destinations. Can you tell me some of the recent findings of your research that might benefit our listeners?
Certainly. I think one of the first and foremost things, and this actually stems back into our weaponization and travel research, that for any traveler, business, leisure, first and foremost is and always will be safety and security. That's one of the hierarchy of needs, right? You can never overcome that if, in terms of trying to get someone to come to your destination, if they simply do not feel safe and secure. That is something that I think people will. It's almost like a full stop. If someone feels their own personal safety or their family safety or whatnot, that's a very incredibly and very hard, hill to battle over to do that. Some of our research time and time again has shown that. So, ways to sort of look into combating that is you're starting to see stuff like cleanliness standards, pledges, and things like that are what we should be doing, to help destination sort of be the main liaison to articulate, our facility, like our convention center is GBAC accredited, or we are taking a cleanliness pledge, do that kind of stuff to provide some sense of safety and security to not only the residents, but hopefully your underlying visitors and whatnot. The other ones is, we've been doing these sort of weekly pulse check surveys about just kind of the current state of operations, and one of the ones like we've certainly seen is that most destinations have transitioned to basically, full remote based operations and are seriously looking at what does it mean to be, how do you run a visitor center if you can't physically open it, or you have to maintain physical distancing and that sort of stuff? Well, what does it actually mean to do that? It's no longer traditional, just handing out quick guides to whoever you can in an unsanitary way. So we started to see sort of that, that segment of our work starting to shift and look into what does that mean going forward. So obviously, procurement of assets being digital is huge, right? So if you can't physically give out a quick guide, how can you deliver that information still electronically, and things like that? If you How do you manifest, point of sale systems if you can't physically do that? So a lot of that sort of stuff, as we were already starting to see kind of before the pandemic, have just been sort of accelerated exponentially. Trying to sort of figure out ways that we can, still accommodate the visitor and the resident, but now obviously trying to do that in new ways, and unfortunately with, obviously, like a lot of us, less money and less people and jobs to do behind us.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Well, I tell you that's some interesting stuff that you guys are seeing out there. There's so many members I mean, you guys have thousands of members of Destinations International. And if one of my listeners is a member, what's the best way for them to maximize their value that they're getting as a member of Destinations International?
Certainly. I think an easy starting point, even the route that I took that really kind of opened my eyes, is get involved with the committees. We're about to do a sign up for our 2021 committees and task forces. And it's everywhere from global development to COVID specifically to membership to our equity, diversity, inclusion initiatives. That's a great way just to meet not only people that you might not interact with on your day to day, but get a sense of what's happening in the sector at large. That's sort of what I think an easy one just to get involved with, to volunteer time in that aspect.
And that's coming up, you say?
Yeah, we'll be releasing our sign up sheet, our sign up to volunteer and serve, hopefully within the next month, for members to participate in where they want to serve for the year.
Great.
The other one after that it is participating in the events. I always say engagement sort of is a two-way street, and the things that I got so much out of being a member myself was showing up at the events. So, I was always asking questions. I was trying to talk to the speakers afterward. I was trying to talk to staff, and then also volunteering my time to help offer, education stuff to the summits and education going forward after that. That introduced me to so many people and increased my network tenfold, that it was never a question to me of the value of what it meant to be a member, because I was doing whatever I could to maximize it as possible. And those are kind of just sort of two ways to do it. Obviously, we have our community forum, we have a bunch of various products, all this type of stuff are other sort of ways to do it. But those are the two that I would sort of start with first. Definitely the committees is a easy one to start with.
Yeah, I like that. The third one that I would add is the education that's available. And obviously there's a lot more, and you could have said 20 values that you get from being a member, right? But the CDME training, I'm starting mine actually in December down at the Palm Springs event, and I'm really excited about it. Everybody that I've talked to that has gone through that training has really enjoyed it. I have had a few people say, well, it is a lot of work, but that's a good thing. You can't get better without sacrificing a little bit. And I'm excited to get my CDME training done.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have taught the research elective, the class, and there's something to be said. Morgas will always repeat this, but there's something to be said about we're exposed all the time to summit and annual convention style learning is where you see content in 30 to 35-minute blocks, and then you change gears and go to the next one. There's something to be said about going with a small core group of people in a classroom environment, hopefully without distractions, without your regular workload and that kind of stuff, and actually really trying to open your mind and learn and hear from peers and hear from the instructors on best practices, and then to write it down and to brainstorm and that sort of stuff, and to go with your class like that, like in a traditional classroom setting. There really is something to be said about that, and the work that's involved that goes with it, that it really does prepare you and propel you in ways in your career and advancements that it's kind of hard to undertake without doing it. So I'm happy to hear that you're interested in pursuing it in December.
Yeah, can't wait to get it started. Another question that I have for you, it's always hard to do, and especially in a time like this, but I want you to look into your crystal ball, Andreas, and I want you to tell me what, as of today, what you see the next 12 months looking like for our industry.
Ooh, that's a hard one. A hard one. Hopefully, I can give a good answer. People will come out of this with a renewed sense of how much they really truly value travel. And that we actually, I think people are seeing that now being stuck in lockdown, that people just won't take that for granted anymore. That what it really means to actually travel. And honestly, us as a species, we're one of the only species that actually does literally travel for leisure. You don't see ants doing that. Other ones they travel for for biological reasons. They don't travel for leisure to better ourselves. To increase our emotional capacity. So I'd like to believe that we sort of as an industry and society will recognize that, and hopefully some of that comes through with emphasis on destination organizations. That people will see the value that they bring to the community and greater sense as part of it. And that travel will return. That is an inevitability. Obviously, the speed at which it comes back and things like that will certainly vary, and probably be a while till we get back to what people consider 2019 levels and that type of stuff. But I'd like to believe that mindfulness and that appreciation and maybe hopefully a sustainable conversation will come about from this in a year's time, or as we progress through the next 12 months.
Yeah, one thing that I see is I feel like while the crisis is difficult and challenging, one thing that it's done is sped up a lot of the things that we probably should have been doing for the last 5 years that we just haven't gotten around to, and forced us to really accelerate what we need to do to get better. Because you can't procrastinate anymore because everybody is fighting. Like you said, the industry was at its all-time high before coronavirus hit. And now everybody is fighting for the few dollars that are out there right now, and the few travelers that are out there right now. And so, a mediocre message or a mediocre plan will no longer do it. And I think one of the benefits that comes out of this is, even though it's really hard and it's a lot of work for the people that are fighting through this, the destination will be better for it on the other side.
Yeah, and your comment about competing is dead on. It's not just competing for dollars and cents here. You have to understand, if the pandemic has taught us anything, is that we truly are in a globalized, networked world. We aren't just competing with our content. We are all competing for attention at the world stage. And the one currency that people need to sort of understand and recognize that is most valuable to our destination, it is the currency of new talent. For those who obviously are fortunate to still have jobs, who are working remote, it's taught companies around the world that this massive workforce can not have to exist in the same building where the work is located. Think about that. What is an opportunity for people now who think, wow, I could actually do my work from anywhere. So I could maybe move anywhere, not the traditional live where you work type of stuff. And that is a massive opportunity for that. Really, destination organizations are uniquely positioned to handle, that now small little places across the world, like my affinity for Vermont, can actually compete on the world stage of talent acquisition. That bright young minds and stuff like that who might have a job in Silicon Valley or Washington D.C. like I do, but their values more resonate around a smaller base rural community, can actually achieve that now. And that's really what we're competing with when we get out of this. Is that I like to say that this is kind of like a great reshuffling of the deck, right? All the cards are up in the air. And like any good poker game, it's not only part luck, but it's also part skill. It's understanding when to pick up and fold. And I think that's really where the true opportunity is here right now is, when your opportunity comes for the hand to be played, what will you play?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Would you say that's your main takeaway from the episode today for destinations, that we all kind of need to take a step back and take another look at the way we're staffing our organizations right now? And are we doing it just because that's the way it's always been done before? Or are we innovating and trying to find the very best talent to help us through this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if the pandemic taught us anything, there is no handbook. There's no toolkit out there that says, okay, here's how you properly navigate a pandemic as a destination organization, in the sense of, So a lot of ways, this is uncharted territory for a lot of us. And so, I understand that's scary to say that and to think that. Like, I think we have to understand that sometimes being uncomfortable, like, again, not only will make us better people, but it can make us better as organizations, better as members of society. That we will come out stronger and better than we were before.
Awesome. Well, Andreas, this has been so great. Thanks for taking the time to come visit with us today.
Yep. Thank you, Adam, so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to, after we kind of get through the next several months, it'd be interesting to have you come back on and give us another state of the industry a speech and let us know kind of the changes that you've seen over that time.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, this has been another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. Thank you for listening. If you want to go leave us a rating or a review, that would sure be great, especially if you enjoyed today's episode. Other than that, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Today's episode is brought to you by Relic. As many of you know, I own an advertising agency called Relic, and we work specifically with tourism destinations. If there's any of you that are struggling with what to do next, or you've tried agencies that don't specialize in tourism, or if you've been using the local flavor for years and years and you're just looking for something new, I would say give us a call. Give us the opportunity to take a look at your plans, see what you're doing, use our tourism knowledge and industry specialty to examine everything from your brand to your tactical execution and make recommendations of how to help. We'll do that assessment for free. We'll give you those recommendations for free. And if you like what we say, maybe you can hire us to execute on those plans. So kind of a risk-free opportunity to have us take a holistic look at everything you're doing, provide some recommendations, and you can kind of see us in action. If you're interested in having us do something like that, please send me an email directly at adam@relicagency.com. I would love to set that up with my team.